My name is Teresa. I'm 64 years old, and my daughter left me in a nursing home while she flew to New York with her new mother in law. I remember the sound of the suitcase wheels rolling across the floor. I was standing by the front door, holding a small bag with my Bible inside. Amanda didn't even look at me when she said, "It's only for a few weeks, Mom. You'll have all the care you need there." A few weeks. Those words spun around in my head like a broken record. The car ride was silent. Her new husband, Douglas, just stared out the window. No conversation, no apology, just silence. When we arrived at the place, it smelled like bleach and loneliness. An old man in a wheelchair looked up at me and said, "New fish?" I didn't answer. My knees were shaking. The moment Amanda turned to leave, I grabbed her wrist. "You're not coming back, are you?" She blinked, hesitated, then said, "I just need time, okay? We'll talk when I get back." And just like that, she was gone. The nurse, a tall woman with tired eyes, placed her hand on my back and led me inside. The hallway was narrow, the walls were pale. My room had one window, barred from the outside. I sat on the bed, opened my bag, and pulled out my Bible. I read Psalm 27 out loud, my voice trembling. "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me." I didn't cry, not yet. I just closed my eyes and tried to breathe, because something inside me told me this wasn't just a visit. The first morning, I woke up to the sound of metal carts rolling down the hallway. Breakfast was toast, powdered eggs, and something they called coffee. I sat with 3 other women. None of them spoke, just chewed, slowly. Across the table sat Mary. Her hands trembled as she lifted her fork. Her hair was snow white and carefully combed, but her eyes were somewhere else, somewhere far away. I tried to smile. "Hi, I'm Teresa." She looked at me, nodded, and whispered, "They all leave, eventually. Daughters, sons, husbands, they forget us." I felt a lump in my throat, but I nodded, because I knew she was right. Later that day, I met Elijah, a retired carpenter. He walked with a cane and had a thick scar running from his chin to his collarbone. Said it came from a car crash decades ago. "You miss her?" he asked while we were playing a lazy game of dominoes in the rec room. "My daughter? More than I ever thought I would." He leaned back in his chair, sighing. "Mine visits once a year, and always in a hurry." The room was filled with quiet despair. Some residents stared blankly at the television. Others just dozed off in their chairs. One woman kept asking where her husband was, every 5 minutes. Each time, a nurse would gently tell her, "He passed away, Maureen." And each time, her face would collapse in pain, like it was the first time she'd heard it. I went back to my room and sat by the window. Outside, a squirrel darted across the lawn, chasing something invisible. That night, I whispered a prayer. "Lord, don't let me disappear here." 3 days in, I received a postcard. No envelope, just a cheap postcard of Times Square. On the back, Amanda had written, "Hope you're adjusting well. Things here are amazing. We saw a Broadway show last night. Love you." No signature, not even a mom. I stared at the glossy lights of New York on that card and felt something hot rise in my chest. Anger and sorrow. I went to the common room where Mary was knitting with trembling fingers. "She sent me a postcard," I said flatly. Mary didn't even look up. That's more than most get. Later that afternoon, the administrator called me in. "Teresa, your daughter has arranged for an indefinite stay. Billing is covered for the next 6 months." I blinked. "Indefinite?" She didn't mention a return date. My mouth went dry. What about my house? My things? She said everything's being taken care of. I walked out of that office like a ghost. My hands were shaking, but not from age. In the hallway, Elijah was fixing a crooked painting on the wall. He looked at me, squinting. You all right? Number I'm not, I said. She's not coming back, Elijah. He rested his hand on my shoulder. Some people love until it's inconvenient. That's not love, it's investment. And when the interest runs out, they pull their funds. That hit me like thunder. That night, I refused dinner, sat alone in my room, Bible on my lap, but I couldn't read it. My fingers just trembled over the cover. I realized then I had been left behind, not just physically, but emotionally. Like an old account closed without warning. 1 week passed. Amanda didn't call, not once. The nurse, Julia, started bringing my meals to the room. You're not eating, Teresa, she said softly, placing a tray near my bed. That's not good. I nodded, but my stomach didn't want food. It wanted answers, and a daughter who still cared. That evening, Mary collapsed in the hallway. A fall. Her hip cracked like dry wood. I was the one who found her, lying there, gasping in pain. I yelled for help. Nurses came running. And as they lifted her, she grabbed my hand, her eyes wild with fear. Don't let them forget me, she whispered. I promised I wouldn't. And something shifted inside me that night. I couldn't leave this place, but I could refuse to vanish inside it. I began reading aloud in the common room, Psalms, Proverbs, short stories. Slowly, people began gathering around. Even Elijah nodded along. I helped Julia fold towels. I wrote letters for the residents who couldn't write. I asked them about their lives, who they were before they were just old. And for the first time, they started smiling back. One afternoon, Elijah said, You brought light to this place. You know that, don't you? I smiled, only because I finally stopped waiting for someone else to turn it on. But when I asked about making a phone call to Amanda, the front desk told me the number had been disconnected. Disconnected. Not just the line, our whole connection. I stood outside under a gray sky and let the wind sting my face. Lord, I whispered, what now? And the verse came into my mind like a whisper. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. It was a Friday when I received the letter. Not from Amanda, from a lawyer. The envelope was thick, official looking. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, it read, Notice of property transfer. Your home has been sold. Proceeds deposited into a joint account under Amanda Evans and Douglas Evans. I dropped the paper. My knees gave way, and I sat on the cold floor of my room. Sold. My house, my home, without my consent. I stared at the wall in silence until Elijah came by and found me. What happened? I handed him the letter. He read it, then whispered, She sold you. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat at the window, watching the moon hang in the sky like a witness. And for the first time, I cried. Not soft tears, but shaking, gasping sobs from the pit of my soul. I felt betrayed, abandoned, worthless. In the middle of that storm of sorrow, I heard Mary's voice from the hallway. She was humming an old hymn. I opened the door, and there she was, fragile, bent, but still standing. She saw my face and whispered, You don't need a house to have a home. And that broke me all over again. The next morning, I met with Julia. I want to see a lawyer, I said. Now. She nodded, firm. I'll make the call. That afternoon, I sat across from a volunteer legal aid worker named Angela. Young, sharp, kind. She looked me in the eye and said, "They had power of attorney, but if there was fraud, we can fight it." A spark lit in my chest. I wasn't gone, and I wasn't alone. Angela worked fast. She requested documents, filed complaints, and uncovered something Amanda hadn't counted on. Deception leaves fingerprints. Within 2 weeks, we discovered that Amanda had forged my signature on the final sale contract. The account she used was in her husband's name, with no trace of me on it. Angela looked me in the eye. "This is criminal fraud, and we have a case." I sat still for a moment, then said quietly, "I don't want revenge. I want my life back." Elijah sat beside me later that evening on the garden bench. The air was cool but calm. He handed me a warm cup of tea. "You've got more fight in you than I've seen in a long time." I smiled. "It's not fight, Elijah. It's faith." A week later, Amanda finally called. Julia handed me the phone. I pressed it to my ear and said nothing. Her voice was brittle. "Mom, I didn't know what else to do. We needed the money, and you seemed so fine there." I whispered, "You didn't even ask me." "I thought you'd understand." "No, Amanda, you thought I wouldn't resist." Silence. Then she said, "They're saying I could face charges." I took a deep breath. "I'm not the one who put you there." Click. She hung up. Angela encouraged me to pursue the case, and I agreed. Not to punish Amanda, but to protect others like me. I began speaking at community meetings, telling my story. Older women came up with tears in their eyes, thanking me. Some shared their own stories, too ashamed, too afraid to speak before. I was no longer just a forgotten mother in a room with barred windows. I was Teresa, and I was heard. With Angela's help, I regained control over what was left of my finances. The house was gone, yes, but my name was cleared, and Amanda was under investigation for fraud. The judge granted a temporary injunction on the joint account, freezing all activity. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. Word spread inside the nursing home. People I had barely spoken to began greeting me in the hallway. They saw me not as another abandoned woman, but as someone who stood up. Even Mary started calling me the General. "Because you led with grace," she said, knitting away as if nothing had changed. One afternoon, a young nurse in training named Rosa sat with me during lunch. "My grandmother's going through something similar," she said quietly. "Can I bring her here to meet you?" I nodded. Of course. Days later, Rosa's grandmother arrived, frail but sharp. We talked for hours. That day, I realized something. God never wastes pain. Every moment I thought was a curse. Being left here, losing my home, had become a testimony, a way to reach others. I began organizing small prayer groups in the evenings. People came. Some just sat and listened, others wept. And one night, as we gathered in the common room, Elijah stood and said, "We may have been left here by our families, but we are not forgotten. Teresa reminded us that our value doesn't fade with age. She reminded me of the words, 'Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you.'" I closed my eyes and felt something powerful rise inside me. Hope. Not because things were perfect, but because I had found purpose, even in brokenness. Weeks passed, and Amanda's silence grew heavier. The nursing home held a small event, a charity auction to raise funds for new equipment. I volunteered to help, organizing items and talking with guests. Among the visitors was a woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile. Angela, the lawyer who had become more than just my advocate. She told me, "The case is progressing faster than expected. Amanda's defense is weak." I nodded, but felt a knot in my stomach. I wasn't sure I wanted to see Amanda again. That evening, Julia brought me a letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar. It was from Douglas, Amanda's husband. He wrote that Amanda was overwhelmed, regretted everything, and wanted to meet to make amends. I folded the letter slowly, thinking of the years lost, the pain, the betrayal. Elijah found me afterward. "Are you going to meet her?" I looked at him and said, "I don't know, but I have to decide soon." That night, I prayed harder than ever. "Lord, give me strength to face the truth, to forgive, or to let go." The next day, Amanda called again. Her voice cracked. "Mom, can we talk? Please." I stared at the phone. This moment would change everything. I agreed to meet Amanda in the nursing home's small chapel. The smell of old wood and candle wax filled the air. She arrived late, eyes red from crying. For a moment, I didn't know whether to embrace her or turn away. She started, voice trembling. "Mom, I was wrong. I was selfish. I thought money could fix everything, but it only made me lose what mattered most." I listened, heart pounding. "You left me there," I said, voice breaking. "You sold my home without asking." Amanda dropped her head. "I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong." We sat in silence for a long time. Then she said, "Can you forgive me?" I looked at her and remembered the verse I held on to through this nightmare. "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ, God forgave you." Tears streamed down my face. "I forgive you," I whispered. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. We agreed on boundaries, on healing slowly. Amanda promised to visit more, to be honest. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of peace. Because sometimes faith means holding on to hope, even when the road is dark. This point is good for you? Want to change anything? Or shall we move on? Perguntar ao ChatGPT.